At least 115 people are now known to have been killed in an attack on a concert hall near Moscow, and officials are warning that the death toll could rise further. Investigators have announced a series of arrests. 4 people directly involved in the attack have been detained. The so-called Islamic State has claimed responsibility. A warning: the following report contains images you could find distressing.
Hours after the attack, rescuers are finally able to enter the building. Inside, debris and devastation. Much of the building has burned. Russian authorities say the blaze started after the gunmen doused the venue in the flammable liquid. As fire and smoke engulfed the concert hall, some hiding between the rows couldn't make it out.
When we crawled out of the concert hall and went into the utility room, I heard pops. But they weren't some kind of large-scale explosions. They were some kind of pops. Maybe it was some kind of small explosive. And there was also a burning smell. I got the impression that they probably wanted to somehow concentrate a lot of people inside and also have a huge fire, so they couldn't get out. I have a feeling about that.
Investigators seized weapons and ammunition left behind by the attackers. Witnesses say the gunmen shot non-stop after bursting into the building. Special forces continue to work at the scene, studying the evidence and CCTV footage. Public events have been cancelled across Russia, as the country comes to terms with one of its deadliest terror attacks in decades.
Let's get more on the story from DW's Riga bureau chief Yuri Reshetto. He's been reporting from the Latvian capital ever since the Russian authorities closed down DW's bureau in Moscow. Greetings, Yuri. What's been the reaction in Moscow to the attack?
Well, Michael, as for official reactions, President Putin has still not made a public statement. He sent his well-being wishes to the authorities of the victims through the deputy head of government, even though his statement was announced yesterday, then surprisingly cancelled. As for people's reaction, people are shocked and asking many questions, of course. According to the latest data, you said it, 115 people were killed. The causes of death were gunshot wounds and smoke inhalation from the fire. And here, of course, many people ask why the persons who died from the smoke were not able to leave the building in time and why they were not rescued by emergency services in time.
Again, the so-called Islamic State militant group has claimed responsibility. Why would it attack Moscow?
There is an IS or Islamic State video claiming responsibility indeed. Its authenticity has been verified by some Western experts, but that's important. The Russian authorities have not yet confirmed this as an official version. If IS is indeed behind the attack, it was clearly revenge by the Islamists, revenge for the fact that Russia has fought quite a lot against the Islamic State in recent years. In Syria, for example, where the Russian army is supporting the ruler Assad. There, the Russians have also fought against IS, but also in Afghanistan. And let me remind you that in recent decades, in the mainly Muslim regions of the North Caucasus, underground militias have been repeatedly fighting against the Russian state.
Curious what your reporting is telling you. Are there any credible connections between this attack and the war in Ukraine, a connection that some in Moscow are reportedly making?
Yes, indeed. Many in Russia and even officials see a Ukrainian trail, and supposedly the alleged terrorists wanted to flee to Ukraine or Belarus when they were caught by the Russian intelligence. If, of course, this information is true. What is obvious here is that some heavily armed men wanted to kill ordinary people. There was no political demand, there was no hostage-taking, and everything looks like pure revenge. We don't know who took took revenge for what? The official reaction from Kiev was that Ukraine had nothing to do with it. Russian propaganda sees it differently. The Kremlin has so far remained silent.
Yuri, a question no doubt some in Russia might be asking is how security could be breached to this extent in Moscow, just on the heels, by the way, of Putin's re-election.
Absolutely. This is exactly, Michael, the question that people in Russia are asking. And yeah, it's quite obvious that Moscow is not protected from a terrorist attack, just as Berlin, London, Paris, Brussels have not been protected in recent years. This attack has obviously been well prepared. Heavily armed men kill the security people with machine guns and shoot wildly at innocent people. You can't protect yourself against that. The question is rather why these heavily armed men were able to carry out their crime unhindered. Why the secret services didn't uncover these men much earlier and prevent this attack. Apparently, the Russian state has invested a lot in fight against the politically dissident Russians and neglected the fight against terrorism.
That's DW's Riga bureau chief Yuri Risheto. As always, many thanks, Yuri. The German government has condemned the Moscow attack. Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called it a cowardly and inhuman act of terror. And Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on X, "We condemn the horrific terrorist attack against innocent concert-goers in Moscow. Our thoughts are with the families of the victims and all those wounded."